Hello, everyone. It's Belinda Weaver here from Copyright Matters, and I want to talk to you about social proof. So, one of the biggest influences on not only the number of customers that are attracted to your business, but the type of customers that are attracted to your business is the stories that you share, right? There's lots of other things we can do in fancy marketing, but customers like to see themselves in the problems that you're solving and the people that you're working with. And that's where social proof comes into it. It's incredibly powerful. But I know that a lot of people have friction around talking about themselves, bragging about themselves, sharing wins, and all that kind of stuff. And what I want to share with you today is not only an amazing copywriter, but I want to push down those walls that say that sharing social proof is bragging and that we should be uncomfortable about it. It's not, it's marketing, and it directly influences how many clients you have and what kind of customers want to work with you. Now, today I'm going to be talking to Amanda Perris, the case study queen. She's a confident copywriter. That means she's in my private coaching membership, and she is going gangbusters with her very specific niche. And very important niche as well. And I wanted to share it with you all because everyone should be doing this in their business. So if you're watching this live, say hello so we can see you. You have to give StreamYard permission so that I can see your face and your name and we can bring you on as a commenter. And then if you're watching the replay, drop a hashtag replay because I want to see who is watching this. But for now, I'm going to bring Amanda in. Hello.
Hello.
Oh, it's so good to see you here, Amanda.
Good to see you, Belinda. Thank you for having me.
This is going to be really interesting because I'm a huge promoter of social proof as a way of promoting. So hello, Sarah's in the comment. Before we get into it, because I got a lot of things I want to pick your brain about, can you tell everyone who you are and who you serve and what it is you do?
Sure. I'm Amanda from Case Study Queen, and I'm a copywriter who specializes in writing narrative style case study stories for coaches and course creators. Basically for transformational businesses that want a really authentic way to genuinely connect and build trust with their audience. And we know we can do that through story. And I work with people all over the world. So UK, Canada, Europe, Australia. Yeah, it's fantastic.
It's one of the gifts of being a digital freelancer, right? Because we don't have to just look for clients in our local area. And that's for all the people tuning in as well. Sharing stories of who you're working with and the problems you're solving can reach all corners of the globe. So yes, thank you again for being here today. We've got lots of people coming in and saying hello. So I want to dig into something you just said. Going off script here. You said narrative style case study. So what is that? Tell me a little bit more about that.
Sure. So a narrative style case study, or what I call case study stories, are ones that weave through a lot more of the elements that are present in like just a multifaceted person. So it's not just the transformation that you've managed to make for them in their business. It's not just the metrics. It's also those intangibles. It's the difference you've made in their life. And when you are communicating with your audience, that's what they're actually looking for. Like, how many times do we say it's not the feature, go deeper for the benefit. And a case study story allows you to actually dig into that, and it creates more of a story instead of a dot point approach, so people can get invested in it. They can see themselves in the story. Yeah, so
yes, I love that. And, just digging in that, like, metrics are great to say, the results were boosted by this percentage, or there was this much revenue. But when we're weaving in the bigger picture of the story, it's how people felt, because it's when we're going through that buying process, it's how we feel and how we're made to feel as customers that can really influence whether we come back and also whether we share that business as a word of mouth story. So I love that the highlighting of the importance of, like, let's move past a quote. Let's share the experience that I'm offering all my clients. So thanks for sharing that. So we've been talking about social proof. We've just dropped case studies, and there's more to this. What what is social proof cover? What are the different types of things that we're talking about here today?
Yeah, right. Okay, so social proof has become, I mean, I don't know if this is controversial, but has become a bit of an umbrella term to, actually, it's probably not controversial. So a bit of an
I feel really
umbrella
excited.
term. I know, it's a bit of an umbrella term as just a like catch-all for any type of authority or anything like that that requires sort of outside input to add oomph to your copy. But there's mechanisms underlying social proof that actually speak to how people make decisions. People are quite often familiar with like persuasion principles in the copywriting area, like Robert Cialdini's book, Persuasion. And it's almost like we think social proof is something that we have to force onto people to make them do something or to manipulate them in some way. Like it's us inserting something into our copy that's like manipulating how they respond to it. But what we need to understand is those persuasion principles are actually our own humans decision-making processes. Okay, so when we're actually inserting different types of social proof into our copy, what we're doing is we are helping people come to an informed decision by backing up assertions with proof. So if you claim in a piece of copy that you do a wonderful job for somebody, you can add a quote from somebody that you did a wonderful job for. You're making an assertion, you're backing it up. People are having questions, you're answering those questions. And the idea is not to do it in a manipulative way or to try to get them to buy something they don't want. It's actually that really authentic conversation. And if you present that in a truthful way, you're helping them come to a decision about something that is relevant and meaningful for them and can really help them. So as for different types of social proof, you look at those different decision-making processes, such as we make decisions around our perception of authority. So again, like when we have things like people we've worked with or trainings we've done, we always need to look at it from the perspective of the decision maker. It's not about putting up stuff that makes us feel good. It's about what matters to them, what's important to them. We've got social proof around consensus. Do other people think the way I do? And are those people like me? So I might like it if they like it. Okay, so you've got things again related to authority, and proof is the kind of stats that you can put in. So you've got the metrics. So they're probably some of the big, like broader ones that you would commonly see without going deeper. And I think it's important to mention here that those decision-making processes can sometimes be what you'd call heuristics. So they're kind of rules of thumb for your brain to allow you to make a decision fairly quickly. So if that's the case, then you need to understand that there's also a deeper layer where people want to really consider something, especially if it's a high value offer, if it is a high cost offer, if it's high risk, if it's high complexity, they're going to want to dig deeper, and they're going to want to make sure the decision they're making is really aligned with their identity and their values, and that it's going to actually help them with their transformation. So there is different types of social proof, but there's also different layers of social proof that need to be used in different contexts.
I love that because, you know, as you said, people want to, and I said this in the intro as well, people want to see themselves. So if I want to do this, I want proof that other people like me have done this. And you use some great language towards the end there of like saying we want to reduce the risk. And, you know, if we're looking at the hierarchy of motives, safety and security is in the bottom. That's because it's the strongest one. And when we see that other people have gone before us, we're like, okay, this is less risky. There's a lot of fear about being the first one. We just don't want to be the first ones. And so if we can show that other people have done it and live to tell the tale, then that makes people feel a lot safer about taking that next step. And then, I'm doing the triangle because I always think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And there's belonging. And that's the other part of what we're talking about here. We want to know that part of a group of people who have made a similar decision and walked a similar path. And that's very instinctive for us. People are making decisions based on that without even really thinking about it. And you've talked about, there's case studies, there's testimonials, there's things like metrics. You mentioned metrics. So it's like how many other people are subscribed or how many people have liked, things like that. And so we're always looking to get social clues that we are not alone and that this is not a scary, risky decision. So I love that. And another thing I just wanted to highlight that you pointed out the different layers. And you mentioned, as you're going through copy, when you're writing some marketing, it's important to go, where can I find some proof for this point that I'm making? Like, I'm pretty awesome. Hang on, I need to find some quotes that really back that up. Or I'm the easiest to work with. It doesn't really, it's not as effective if I say it as when I can show that other people think that same thing. So I love that terms of like the types of social proof, but also the layers of social proof. Oh, this is so nerdy for copywriting and I love it. I love it so much. So, what you were going to say?
Yeah, well, you were talking about sort of like people relating and wanting to know that people have gone before them, but specifically they want to see people like them have gone before them and have found success. And I don't know if we will go into this, but like one big thing that a lot of business owners miss with presenting this sort of information is that you need to present your social proof, especially in case studies, where your audience is at. So a lot of people make the mistake of just doing the happy ending. That was fabulous. I had such good results. But someone who's still in that state where they're in the before state and they want to get to that after state, like that seems so far away for them. So you need to present something that brings them into the story, and that is presenting the moment where someone else was struggling with it too. So they go, okay, that's me, that's where I am. And right once they're into that narrative, then they can see how they can get to the end. Otherwise, it's too far away and you've got to get there. They can't see themselves in the story.
I love that. So what we're talking about here is like a testimonial is often the ending. This was great. The project was brilliant. I love the product. It solved my problems. You were easy. Customer service was brilliant. All those kind of things you see. And one thing, I think we'll both agree is the longer and the more detailed social proof you can get, the more believable it is. But the testimonial is the happy ending. So I'm just giggling. We keep saying happy ending. But tell us how a case study is different for people who don't know the difference.
Yeah. Okay. So a case study is something that enters a story at that before state.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're not talking backstory. We're not talking what you did when you were 5, but really that moment where, that moment where they are struggling with something and not just, oh my God, I've got too much on my plate. I need someone to do my email for me. It's like, I've overloaded myself. I'm not spending enough time with my kids. And it's like, I want this business to be successful. And like, I feel really demoralized. At this crossroads where, those sorts of things, like this is like real life, like true stories about real people. And that's why I love like the narrative style, because you start at that before state. Like this is real human experience and you can connect with people on like a wide range. Like even people that are not wanting that product can still get caught up in the story because it's a real experience for a lot of us. So it starts in that before state. That's where you enter the story. And then you hear about their decision-making process, why they chose what they chose, what were the triggers. And then it goes through the process, or if it's, say, a course or a training, what their experience of that was, what had the most impact for them. And then you want to see quite often how it's implemented, because it's one thing to go, well, I learnt this thing and got this result, but we all know there's that missing piece, right? We know that we actually have to do the work when we're talking about sort of courses and trainings and that sort of thing. And then you get to the result, then you get to the outcome, which makes sense once you've actually seen what led to it.
Yes.
Okay, you can go, okay, well, actually, I've had all this evidence presented before me. I've had all the circumstances, and I can make my own decision. And again, that's why I like them so much, because it's a real authentic style of marketing, because there's nowhere to hide. Like, if you're not getting results for your clients, like, you can't just make stuff up in a 1,500 word story about their experience.
Yeah,
people are going to know if it's BS, really. So
yeah.
it's I think it really empowers your audience and potential clients to make informed decisions, and it's because they can follow the story all the way through.
And just for anyone watching, this is my IP. This is how I do the thing that I do. It's a customer journey that lets people identify with the challenges, to identify with the trigger, the need for something to change. Then there's the safety net of explaining how you as a specialist solved this problem. And then there is the result. And what it does, like you said, Amanda, is it takes away that void. It takes away the gap. And so people can see the path that they would have to walk, and they can also get excited about the kind of results because they're based in reality. And when we're talking about details, testimonials are often really light on details because there's just the ending. And then case studies go really deep. And with these kind of things, you can have short case studies, but the more detail you have, the more credible and believable they are. And that trust factor, I was going to do this, the trust factor goes up with the length of it. So, it's really worth investing. I can never get the hand metrics right because I'm also looking at myself in the mirror. Going live. So I would love to talk about your process, because I know you don't, like, you're the case study queen, but you have a whole lot of different ways that you can help business owners create some fantastic social proof. So can you just outline your process, how you go about it? Maybe even like how you get a testimonial versus how you get a case study.
Yeah, good idea. Okay, so part of what I do is I kind of provide almost like an end-to-end process, right? Because it's one thing for business owners just to have a digital asset dropped on their laps, but what do they do with it? It just goes in the folder with all the other digital assets. And this stuff, if is going to work for you, it needs to be out there. It needs to be implemented, right? And one question that I get quite a lot is, like, who is the right fit? Who is the right subject for my case studies? And so that's part of the support I give, like, prior to our project, like at the start of our project, is we actually analyze the different stories, see how they align with the business goals and objectives and key themes and the sort of things they want to communicate. How well does that subject align with their ideal client? So I support them in being able to select the right customer, and I tend to take on quite an active project management role because, again, business owners are busy, and this is kind of a multi-moving part thing, and I don't want to leave it to them to remember all the little bits and pieces and who has to be emailed here and there and what have you. So, I mean, that's another thing I can do to support them. And then basically once I've got a hold of their customer, I take it off their plate for a while, and I'm just liaising with their customer. I'm interviewing them and getting different assets and going through the fact checking process with them. Because once you go through the interview, get it transcribed.
I was going to say, I want to back up because we're dropping some copy jargon here. Assets. What do you mean by assets? Okay. So you're interviewing them to get Let's break it down.
Okay, so I'm interviewing them to get their story.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have a series of questions. Like I work off a base, like I have this kind of core questionnaire, but for each client and for their customer, if I'm doing like a multi case study bundle, I will customize it to that business and that customer.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm asking quite specific questions. My interviews are quite conversational. I try not to stick to regimented questions because it gets them out of the flow, and I want them to feel comfortable enough to share. And quite often, like after the interview, people are like, oh, that was really great. You know, I had fun
Awesome.
talking about myself. And people do enjoy talking about themselves if the pressure's off and you're in a space that's non-judgmental and you're talking to someone who's genuinely interested. So we go through that process and I compile that information. I get it transcribed. I don't transcribe it myself because we outsource things that we don't need to be doing. That's
Yes.
not in our zone of genius in our business.
100%.
And yeah, and then from there, I start breaking it down into the case study story. Like I might map out the story. I, get the narrative arc and like plot out the the plot points and all those sorts of stuff, and I see what's going to be the strongest narrative. And you know what, not everything we talk about makes it into the story because you can't just put everything in there. And I find that if I'm struggling with a case study, it's usually because I've tried to shove in too much good stuff, right?
Yeah.
And once I get in there and you sleep on it, you get a fresh head and you go, actually, I just need to take out this paragraph, I'm trying to weave too much in there. And then you cut it out and it's like, oh my God, that's like so much clearer and so much better. And, I cross-reference that with what I discussed with my client about what their goals were and their objectives were. I send it back to the customer and get them to check over it, making sure it's accurate and they're happy for them and their story and their experience to be presented that way. So they've got control over this process as well. They've got control over how they're being presented, and that gives them like a lot of freedom as well. So
I love that. So a
and
couple of things I just pulled out just quickly is you have to be clear about if you're going to be writing your own case studies and even going on a testimonial collection drive, which everyone should be doing all the time, when you should be regularly asking your customers and clients for reviews of their experience so that you can turn it into a testimonial. But what you said is you've got to be really clear about the objectives and themes. What do you want to use these for? And especially for a case study, I think it's really tempting to just go, tell me all the things and we'll figure it out later. And I get the sense that is part of it, but I think you have to be clear about which pain points you need proof to back up and ultimately what your goal of this marketing is, because that will help you craft a much more solution-oriented story, like a story that fits with where you want to put it. And so I love that. Be clear on your objectives and pick customers that will speak to those objectives. Then you said have some questions ready that will help you dig into why they made the choices they did, what other options they had. I'm just guessing these are the kind of the questions, what they enjoyed about working with you. And ask those questions. And then you said but be prepared to deviate in the conversation, because that's sometimes where the good stuff comes from, right?
Absolutely.
And then it's about pulling out the information that backs up the story you want to tell. And so I love those kind of that step, because I think what sometimes happens is people go, I know I need a problem, a process, and a solution for my case study, and I'm just going to jam in all this information. And you have to be clear on the story you want to tell. And I guess, would you end up sometimes with multiple case studies or multiple quotes where you can use all these quotes, they're just not in the case study? Does that ever happen?
Yeah, it has happened actually. And it was, you know what, I'd have this great case study and I would have all this additional information. I'm like, what do I do with this information? If I just give it to my client, what are they going to do with it? Again, it's just going to be like a digital file sitting on a folder, and what do they know to do with like all this stuff? Which is where I came up with like my second offering. I don't know if like it's in line with kind of what we're discussing, which is my killer quotes, right? For it's once you have the transcript and you've done the interview, you can process that information in a couple of different ways. And one of the ways is creating the case study, but another way is to actually get pull quotes from those transcripts and then compile testimonials that speak to like really specific themes or incidences, and then just like expands on them slightly. Like not to the extent of a case study, but it will dig into like a certain experience, and then you can use them in very targeted places on your website. So that's like the two main offerings I have that are almost like they're drawn from the same based interviews. So I mean, you can have someone that just wants a case study, that's fine, but someone that wants to maximize the use, maximize the information that they're getting, can actually get that, say, as in addition, like as an add-on, and then they're getting like the biggest bang for their buck, really.
Yeah, and that's, for anyone watching, if you are getting reviews on your Facebook page or people are sending you testimonials because you are asking regularly, and I hope you are. And I know when I have testimonials, I have a series of questions that I ask people and I put it together in a testimonial. But I personally splice and dice all my quotes. And just when people send me nice emails and leave great comments on my Facebook page, I collect all of those, because when I'm writing marketing, when I'm writing a landing page, what I'm doing is thinking, what is my customer feeling right now? What are they uncertain about right now? And I want to pull in quotes or drop links to case studies that meets them at that moment. And you made that point before, like you want to meet them with what they're feeling right now and offer social proof that other people felt like that, and then they took action, because that gives people reading permission to keep going.
And I think you brought up like a super important point, which is, and it's another thing that I talk to people quite a bit about when they're thinking about case studies. They get in touch and they're like, is this quite ready for me? Am I ready for a case study? And if they're not at that stage in their business, or if they're not doing those sorts of offers yet, I tell them that one of the first things they can do is start having systems in place to start collecting testimonials. And not only that, but also to create a culture in their business and with their clients where people like volunteer their thoughts, because it's not always a review. Sometimes it's just in conversation. Sometimes, like you said, it's in email, and it doesn't take 2 seconds to go, hey, I loved what you said. Do you mind if I grab that as like a quote from you? And people are like, yeah, that's fine. Or even in conversation, you can email them back and just say, hey, you said XYZ. Does that, is that representative of like how you felt? Can I use that as a quote from you? And you'll find that if you encourage feedback from people, like you ask feedback from people, like your clients and your audience, you respond to emails. Like when you're putting out your email sequences and you ask people to reply, hey, hit reply and tell me blah, 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 and actually get into conversations like that. You're building this culture of communication, and the more people that offer you information and feedback, like naturally, in natural part of conversation, that's where you're going to find potential case studies as well. Because when people are sharing their transformation, like that's what you're looking for. You're looking for someone that's willing to share a transformation. Because I'll say there's quite a few people, when they have a good time with the service, they're happy to shout out how like fabulous the end product was for them. But not everybody is happy to share their before state. They're not always comfortable to talk about the transformation. So you want someone that is that is willing to say, yeah, you know what, I haven't always been in this good place. Like, I was in this less good place, and you helped me like move out of that. But some people, they, you know, they only want
vulnerable.
they only want the rah-rah out
Yeah.
there about them. And so when people are volunteering stories of transformation to you, that's when you need to stand up and take notice. And even if you're not quite ready for like an in-depth testimonial or a case study yet, you can just keep the conversation going with them, or ask them, hey, like, I loved what you said. Do you mind, like, I'm thinking of like doing something with my marketing. Do you mind if I can dig deeper into that with you? Or even, you know what, jump on and do your own interview. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like you get slightly different like
Yeah.
responses from like asking them like yourself, as opposed to getting a third party. But
Because
you
it
know,
feels
like I said,
one, the awkwardness I have, which is why I've outsourced case studies before, is basically it's me going, tell me how awesome I am. Tell me more about that. Keep telling me how awesome. And the blush factor, I can't. I find it incredibly awkward. But as soon as there's a third party involved, it is the stories come more readily. The praise is much higher because the
the
awkwardness.
details as well.
Yeah. Well,
Because the process, right? The process and the implementation, like you're asking someone, okay, explain to me what the process was like. And they're like, you know what the process was like?
yeah.
You did it for me, you know.
Yeah.
But when it's me, I can just go, you know, like, I don't play dumb, but like, I'm
Yes.
curious. Like, tell
Yeah.
me. Like, I don't know everything about this client. I don't know that I haven't taken their course. I don't know everything about it. Tell me about it. I'm really interested to know what your experience is. And they will give you so much more detail about how they felt about the course and how they actually implemented it in ways that, you know what, sometimes you wouldn't even think to ask these questions, right? You wouldn't think to ask someone about, you know, the process, because
Yeah.
you know the process and they know the process. So
Yeah, that's right.
yeah, so
You don't need to reiterate
but
it.
like, a lot of people don't, I mean, even like just jumping on and talking and doing an interview, asking them if you can record it. And a lot of business owners won't even do that. They just send off that hasty little sneaky testimonial email with a few questions. Just go, oh, if you've got some time, please, like, just answer these. And you know, how many times do you not even get a response?
Yeah,
Right?
well,
Or
I would
like,
say I think what a lot of people do more commonly is they say, "Would you mind writing me a testimonial?" And people go, "I would love to," but then they don't know what to say. And so that's
yeah,
when, like,
yeah,
even having a few prompter questions can help, but it's in following up. And I think that's where people feel a little anxious. They're like, "Oh, I don't want to be a pain." But even customers who have an amazing experience will need prompting. So if you don't have a call to action to ask, and I love this point you made, if you don't have a culture of collecting reviews and testimonials, having conversations with your audience, but also sharing reviews and testimonials, so it absolutely normalizes this sharing of experiences,
yep,
it's really hard to get going, but you've got to make some first steps. I talk to a lot of people, business owners, who say, people say nice stuff about me all the time and I achieve amazing things, but I don't have a single testimonial and I never share my results. Well, that's really hamstringing your marketing. And this is where people need to think it's not bragging. You're not bigging yourself up. You're not entering the bro culture, bro marketing world. You are simply going, I work with amazing people and this is their story. And
yep,
that is a very big shift. And I just
yep,
want to highlight for everyone watching, another point that you've made is about splicing and dicing what you get, right? This is not a process of putting a quote up once. This is a process of getting it, making short quotes, making long quotes, making memes, making case studies, right? Putting them strategically on your website so that they meet up with objections on how your customers are feeling, but also publishing them over and over again. This is not a once and done kind of affair. It should be a really strong part of the fabric of your marketing, which means it's done over and over again. And as you said, it's a culture of collecting them, a culture of communicating them, and then it doesn't feel like bragging. Now, Amanda, we've got a few questions from Sarah here. Do you mind taking a few
okay,
questions?
go for it.
All
Hi, Sarah.
right. Sarah says,
Sarah.
what should be the min or max count for case studies, word count? What would you say?
Ooh. Okay, so you brought up before that there's actually a shorter form of case study, and typically So quite often I said I work in the coaches, sorry, I digress a little bit. I said I work with coaches and course creators.
Mm-hmm.
Quite commonly, case studies are used in like enterprise and the tech space, and they typically have those shorter style, not exclusively, but they typically have those shorter style case studies. And they quite often present them in a printed document as well, say or as a PDF download. And generally, on a designed PDF, you might be looking at about 400 words per page. And if someone wants to print out a single case study, like that 1 to 2 pages is quite common, right? So you might be able to cram a few more words in there, but it could be anywhere between 400 and 800 words, right? For a 2-page, for one of those shorter form case studies.
Yeah.
The narrative case studies, you know what? I originally learnt the short form, and then I found that with the type of people that I was working with, I just ended up with a massive case study. I'm like, this is double the size that I'm supposed to be doing according to, the rules or whatever. And I'm like, why is this, why can I not cut this down? And I realized it's because how I was telling the story. And so my average word count for a narrative case study is just based on how I interview and, how many words that original transcript is, the sort of questions I ask and what I pull together. I would always try to keep it under 2,000 words. Typically my audience, they don't print them out on PDFs. They don't print them out. They might have them on as PDFs on their website that can be downloaded, or they'll have them on a web page or something like that. So I still don't want to go too long. So maybe the size of a longer form blog post. So it could be anywhere between 1,200 and 2,000 words. I average around that 1,500 word mark, to be honest. Yeah.
I love it. And,
does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. And remember, the more story you have, especially at a higher price point and a higher complexity, which is what you said at the beginning, you need more, which is why the long form copy, you need more copy because you need more sell, and you have more sell because you have more stories. And that's what this is all about. So the more expensive an item is, the more complicated an item is, you have more story, more information, more of a journey that's of interest in order to be persuasive. And Sarah has another question. What's your say on when a case study doesn't have a happy ending, right? Well, there's no happy ending for a client. How would you treat that? And I guess there's a couple of ideas here. There's I'm assuming it's not, they weren't unhappy, because you're probably not going to have a case study where the client was not happy with what happened, but maybe the end result wasn't what was expected, or it didn't work out as planned. Well, that's the same thing I've just said in 2 different ways.
All right. So, that does go back to making sure you're selecting the right participants for your case studies, because it's not, a happy ending is something different for everybody. Presenting that isn't the goal. Yeah, it's sorry about the terminology I'm using. It is the climax of the story. But that's legitimate author words. Okay, so don't judge me.
All above the desk here. All above the desk.
Yeah, so it's the transformation that's important. What they transform into is, and whether or not you feel like that is a big enough success to warrant a celebration or a happy ending. That's individuals. That's I guess somewhat subjective. But yeah, selecting the right person for the study is important, because it is about that transformation. That is key. It's not just about the success at the end.
And then you were saying, it's the journey that's important. And so you have to go back to those objectives, right? What is it we're trying to uncover in this story? And some of stories, you're going, this is the pain is important, the journey is important, and the end result is a big part of that. Some stories, the journey is enough. The result can be unexpected. So it's really, as you said, it's about being clear about what you want from this story so that you can pick the right people who will deliver that narrative for you.
I wonder if, you know, this familiarity with kind of the Hollywood, like everything's at the end of the movie, everything's wrapped up with a nice bow. But you know what, real life's not always like that. You know, it might not be like your case study might not end at the point where someone is complete and whole and everything's good in their world. That's not going to happen. It's just like a small thing. It can just be the smallest thing that transforms in your life. Because if you look at it from your perspective and things that you've invested in and things that have changed for you, it can be really small things that make a big difference in your life, and that is what you're trying to present to people. Okay, you're presenting them with the information so they can relate, they can make these decisions themselves. They're presented with the evidence, and you know, they can input it in a way that's meaningful for them.
Yes, and process it as well, because also different people will read the same case study and zero in on different aspects of it, because that's what speaks to them. So yeah, I love that. Well, let's and Sarah says, thanks very much, Amanda. So
you're welcome.
Where can people find you? Where do you hang out? Because I've got your website here. Have I got your website name? Comments?
Yeah.
Come on, I got it. Book your case study, the Case Study Queen. So that's your website, obviously. But where do you hang out most if people want to talk to you, find out a little bit more about what social proof they can get your help with?
Yeah, you know what, I float around quite a few groups on Facebook, so you might see me in different business and copywriting groups. I really love hanging out on Instagram. I'm on there quite a bit. Probably really don't post very much.
What's your handle on Instagram?
Yeah, I am at Case Study Queen. Nice and simple.
Nice and simple. Awesome. So
and you know, and I'm on LinkedIn as well. So not Twitter, but yeah. So LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook, and my website.
The home base. Cool. So if you're interested in figuring out how you can start getting better social proof, because remember, it's not just a once and done thing. One asset from someone like Amanda can actually splice and dice and be used in so many different ways. And before
it's like evergreen. It's like evergreen copy, like case studies as well. It's like an evergreen asset that you can use for years. It's like that. One of the main, I probably should have mentioned this, but one of the main strengths of case studies is the versatility of it.
Yes.
Like you can use it across everything as a piece of copy. Like you can use it offline, online, all through your channels. Like you said, you can splice and dice it. It's pretty much evergreen. So yeah, I love them.
Oh, awesome. Which is why you've chosen this niche, which is fantastic.
That's right.
And what a brilliant business name. It's spectacular. So thank you for joining me today, Amanda. We've got Amanda.
Oh, my absolute pleasure.
And I'll see you with Confident Copywriting, of course. But have an amazing rest of your day. You're down under. I'm about to finish up for the day. And if anyone has any questions, this interview will be living in the free Facebook group for the love of copy, and it will also be on YouTube. So you can pop your questions there, and Amanda can always pop back and answer them.
Yes.
So thanks very much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
See you soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye.